Hey everybody, it's Johnny Two Face here, back with another reaction video. This time I'm reacting to the Battle of Valmy by Epic History. So yes, we're now going back to the Napoleonic Wars, or shall I say, towards the tail end of the French Revolution. And I could be wrong by saying the tail end, because judging by this first frame, it shows the storming of the Bastille in France. Hence why France has a Bastille Day. Of course, the long story short is the Republicans had guns but no gunpowder, and they stormed the Bastille because the governor refused to give up the gunpowder. And also, I think I only heard the Battle of Valmy mentioned in the series, also by Epic History, about Napoleon's marshals, where some marshals started their careers or were reaching new heights in their career with the Battle of Valmy, which helped save the young French Republic from outside forces, such as the Austrian Habsburg Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia, which is the biggest state in what is now modern-day Germany. So, before I go off topic, the usual disclaimer when I react to any historical content: if I don't show so much to be what is considered a proper reaction, it's probably obvious I don't know much about the subject at hand, and if I do know anything, I most likely will pause the video to give my input or ask any curious questions, which hopefully will be answered in the comments. With that being said, the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and check out Epic History. Hopefully subscribe and support their channel. And yeah, there's not much to it. So before I ramble on too long, full screen that. Up here. Captions on. Right, that's better. And here we go.
14th of July, 1789. The Bastille, symbol of French royal tyranny, has been stormed by the people.
And also a prison.
For too long they have suffered rampant taxation, forced labor, and now famine. All while the king and aristocracy live in gilded luxury.
Yep. And what doesn't help that the royal residence is not actually wasn't actually in the capital, Paris itself. It was actually in Versailles. Which is, I think, 20, correct me if I'm wrong, which is 20 miles southwest of Paris. I could be wrong, but feel free to correct me in the comments. And it was kind of like the separation of royalty and nobility from the subject, from their subjects. And so the Republicans decide to remove that separation. And it doesn't help with the king's advisors of Louis XVI, who decides to call the General Assembly, which was the French government, which was the sort of French government of the time, which it was rarely called upon. But it didn't help. The voting system was very corrupt, because each estate, if you don't include the monarchy, the nobility, the clergy, and the third estate, which is everyone else, only had one vote each, and the first two estates, with their overwhelming votes, two against one, always voted to up the taxes on the third estate, and also that the first two estates paid very little to no tax. But anyway, let's get back.
No more. In the tennis court oath, representatives of the people swear to curtail the power of the king and establish a constitution.
And remove the separation.
A fervor for the rights of man and the citizen is sweeping away the old regime. A new age is dawning in Europe. An age of enlightenment, equality, and reason. An age of upheaval and war. An age of revolution. In the first euphoric days of the French Revolution, hopes for the future are high. In the aftermath of the tennis court oath, France is governed by a National Assembly, a government of elected deputies dominated by Enlightenment thinkers of the middle class. The Assembly drafts an
which will have its own divisions between the Jacobins, the extremists, and the moderates.
new constitution for France, a formidable challenge, while also directing foreign and domestic policy and attempting to contain a massive economic crisis.
Which France, even before the American War for Independence, was already having a debt crisis, but which was made worse when they sent a lot of their resources to North America to help kick the British out of North America and help the Americans win their independence. Also with some little help from the Spanish and the Dutch as well. But of course, because France didn't really get their money back from helping the Americans gain their independence, they kind of spiraled even further. Their debt spiraled further down. Wow. £8 billion. I probably read that wrong, but still.
At first, most deputies favour a constitutional monarchy. But King Louis XVI and his supporters are disgusted by the idea.
Bear in mind, Louis XVI, when he was first put on the throne, he wasn't actually that ready. It was only because his grandfather died.
They have no intention of sharing power with the Third Estate, the common people.
Yeah.
And
Didn't help that each estate, which was divided into three estates, because it didn't include the monarchy, was the nobility, the clergy, and the third estate, which was the common people. And it didn't help, long story short, that the first two estates, the nobility and the clergy, always voted to up and always win the vote to up the taxes on the third estate. And also they're in favour of serfdom, which if you know the pattern of political corruption, you can easily see why.
wish to see the king's absolute power restored.
Yep.
In June 1791, Louis tries to flee the country to seek aid from loyalist forces on the French frontier. But he is caught at Varennes.
Yeah. Another funny story is that they tried to disguise themselves as normal people and servants, and tried to get help from, as the narrator said, French royalist forces on the frontier, but also because Marie Antoinette, the French queen, is actually Austrian. She's ethnically Austrian, and she was going to try and get her sister, who was the empress at the time, to get some Austrian support to put Louis XVI back on the throne and regain absolute power.
Louis and his family are brought back to...
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that at Varennes, the postmaster questioned him and recognised Louis XVI because his face was on the coins, and immediately recognised him, and then had him arrested and under armed escort brought back to Paris, and that set the Republicans off.
Paris,
Big time.
under armed guard. This outright betrayal by the king fuels a growing divide between those who still
what I said
believe
earlier.
in a constitutional monarchy and those who want to end the monarchy for good and create a republic. In September 1791, a new constitution is agreed. The king retains significant powers and will oversee a new French government, the Legislative Assembly. But it is hindered by internal division. On the left of the assembly, sit the radical Jacobin factions, who want sweeping reforms to taxation, law and church. On the right, the conservative Foyon faction, who think the revolution has gone far enough. With France in political paralysis, both sides see a possible way to unite the country and get what they want through war.
Yeah, so basically, to unite the Republic, the narrator will probably say it, but they declare war on the Austrian Habsburg Empire. Sorry. Habsburgs. Sorry, that's just weird. His Majesty the Emperor and His Majesty the King of Prussia regard the present situation of His Majesty the King of France as a matter of common interest to all sovereigns of Europe. The Declaration of Pillnitz.
In 1792, the great concern of Europe is not France and its revolution, but Poland.
Alright.
The once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth has long been in decline. In 1772, its rapacious neighbours, Austria, Prussia and Russia, had agreed to share out the Commonwealth's border provinces. But there is more to come. In the summer of 1792, Empress Catherine of Russia becomes concerned at a possible Polish resurgence and sends in her troops. Austria and Prussia watch on, determined that any Russian gains at Polish expense are matched by their own.
The partitions.
For the moment, events in France are therefore of secondary importance. Nevertheless, King Louis's treatment cannot be completely ignored by Europe's other monarchs. There are principles at stake, and fears that the ideals of the French Revolution may spread, like an infection, to neighbouring countries.
I still stand by the theory it's because of the extremism of the revolution. But again, I know I could be wrong about it, but still.
The previous year, 1791, Austria and Prussia had issued a joint statement, the Declaration of Pillnitz. The treatment of King Louis, they announced, was of common concern to all European monarchs. This vaguely worded warning, intended to strengthen King Louis's position, causes outrage in France.
Yeah.
The revolutionaries view Austria as a reactionary power, which gives support to dangerous French exiles, the aristocratic émigrés in Koblenz, who wish to invade France and overturn the revolution. They are led by the king's brothers and cousin, and now command a force 5,000 strong.
Okay.
There is growing clamour for war from all quarters. Among the Jacobins, the Girondin faction believe war will unite France. Some even call for a crusade to spread revolutionary ideals across Europe. The king and his supporters believe war will remind France of its traditional loyalties, while privately, King Louis and Marie Antoinette would also welcome French defeat, which would mean an end to the revolution. On the 20th of April 1792, citing numerous provocations, the French Legislative Assembly votes to declare war on the Habsburg monarchy of Austria.
Like I said, Marie Antoinette, even though she's the Queen of France at this time, her family are Austrians, so she's a Habsburg.
France rides a wave of war fever, and hopes are high for a quick victory. But the French army, one of the most powerful forces in Europe, has been thrown into chaos by the revolution. Almost half its officers, all aristocrats, have fled France to escape the revolution. Those who remain are not trusted by their men or the politicians. Old regiments of the Royal Army are also regarded with suspicion. They have been augmented by tens of thousands of fresh volunteers, a citizen army that is eager and full of zeal, but lack discipline, training, and supplies. France hopes to capture the Austrian Netherlands, modern Belgium, a rich province and a seemingly easy target. The experienced generals Rochambeau, Lafayette, and Luckner share command of 3 frontier armies, but cannot agree on a plan. And the fragility of their new recruits is soon exposed.
Yeah.
General Biron, advancing on Brussels, wins a minor skirmish at Quievrain. But he is so alarmed by the disorderly conduct of his troops, he decides to pull back to the frontier. His men are so jumpy that the mere rumor of an Austrian attack triggers a complete rout. Another column, led by General Dillon, meets a similar fate. Rumors sweep the ranks that they have been betrayed by their own officers. General Dillon is shot and bayoneted by his own men, his body dumped onto a fire. Hopes.
Wait. Trying to remember back to the Napoleon Marshals videos, but wasn't Dillon's regiment full of Irish emigres? Feel free to answer that in the comments.
For a quick French victory are shattered, and instead a crisis is brewing. That summer, Prussia declares war on France, joining Austria in an alliance that comes to be known as the First Coalition. Together, they plan to invade France, crush the revolution, and restore the powers of the king. The Prussian army is led by the Duke of Brunswick, regarded as Europe's best general. On the 25th of July, he issues a declaration. If any harm should come to the French royal family, he will bring down an ever-memorable vengeance upon the people of Paris, threatening to destroy the city and execute all rebels.
Yeah, bear in mind that during the French Revolution, not all of France was happy with the French Revolution, because some parts of France, and the one that gets mentioned most, is the Vendée region, which was pretty much anti-republican or anti-revolutionary forces were being fought, or should I say royalist sympathizers, should I say.
6 days later, the Duke of Brunswick crosses the Rhine and advances into France. Paris is in uproar.
Yeah.
Enraged by Brunswick's threat, the National Guard storms the King's Palace, the Tuileries, on the 10th of August. Swiss guards and royal staff are slaughtered. The King and his family take refuge with the Legislative Assembly, and although they survive the massacre, they are now prisoners of the Jacobins. The French army is in disarray, the government in turmoil. The enemy is marching on Paris.
No.
The revolution is in mortal danger.
Citizens, the fatherland is in danger. May those who obtain the honor of marching first to defend it is what most dear to them always remember that they are French and free. Declaration of the Legislative Assembly. Well, that was hard to say quick.
After the disastrous invasion of the Austrian Netherlands, it is obvious that France's citizen soldiers cannot yet be relied upon. They have neither the training nor discipline of the old royal battalions. So the French army undergoes rapid reforms. Formations and doctrine are simplified to match the skill of the new recruits, who continue to flood in from the provinces. Camping gear and heavy supply wagons are ditched to increase mobility. Most crucially, veterans of the old Royal Army, previously looked on with suspicion, are allowed back into the field.
Okay.
This revitalized force will prove far more effective, though it still lacks experienced officers. For the time being, France has just 54,000 troops, under the command of Lafayette and Luckner, between Brunswick and Paris. The combined Austro-Prussian army totals 84,000 men, a relatively small force, but deemed sufficient to brush aside an inexperienced enemy. The cautious Brunswick advances slowly into France. On the 23rd of August, he captures the border fortress of Longwy. 10 days later, he captures the fortress city of Verdun. The fall of Verdun triggers panic in the capital. Thus far, you have only had a make-believe warfare, warns Jacobin leader Georges Danton. We shall now have a more terrible war, the war of the nation against the despots. It is time to say to the people that they must hurl themselves upon their enemies. Such words fuel rumors of a plot within Paris. Mobs take savage, preemptive action, storming the city's jails and butchering all those they find within. Priests and nuns who have not sworn allegiance to the new state are also targeted. The September massacres leave more than 1,000 dead. Things are little better at the front. Rochambeau has resigned in disgrace. Lafayette has defected to the Austrians following a disastrous attempt to launch his own military coup. The new commanders are Generals Kellerman and Dumouriez.
Oh yes, definitely heard of
enthusiastic supporters of the revolution, but as yet untested in high command. Dumouriez, energetic and bold, is tasked with holding the coalition advance at the Argonne forest. But believing the enemy will head south, he fails to properly guard the passes, and Brunswick outflanks Dumouriez to the north. Chazot's division is routed by just 1,500 Prussian hussars. The panic is so great, it nearly triggers the collapse of the entire French army. Dumouriez only just manages to hold his forces together. The road to Paris is now open for Brunswick. But Kellerman's troops have finally arrived to support Dumouriez. His Army of the Centre contains some of the best regiments in the French army, and gives Dumouriez the confidence to advance against the enemy. Rather than moving to block the road to Paris, Dumouriez makes the bold decision to march against the rear of the coalition army, threatening their lines of communication. Unwilling to risk continuing the advance, Brunswick doubles back to engage the French. Here, he thinks, is a chance to destroy the revolutionary army, which has never yet managed to stand its ground.
Arise, children of the fatherland, the day of glory has arrived. La Marseille. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. 1792.
In the early hours of the 20th of September 1792, a thick fog blankets the rolling countryside around Valmy. Brunswick's advance guard, marching east, runs into General Valence, holding the village of La Lune. Valence's men are veterans of the old Royal Army. They put up a stiff fight and buy time for the rest of the French army to deploy on a ridge just west of Valmy. Brunswick had not expected such determined resistance. He decides to wait until more troops have arrived before launching his assault. The two armies are now of almost equal size, about 36,000 French facing 34,000 Prussians. Both sides also bring up their artillery, 40 French guns against 56 Prussian. While the Prussians have greater numbers, French guns are better positioned on the hills. The French artillery has also been less affected by the revolution than other arms. They are experienced, disciplined, and benefit from the famous Gribeauval system, which has improved and standardized artillery equipment.
Okay.
As both sides open up a deafening barrage, Dumouriez and Kellerman ride up and down the lines, exposing themselves to flying round shot, encouraging their men to hold firm. French troops show their resolve by roaring out a new revolutionary song that is all the rage that summer, La Marseillaise.
Alright, I did pronounce it wrong.
As the artillery duel drags on, it becomes clear that the French will not be so easily broken. At 1 p.m, Brunswick orders a general advance. The Prussian infantry come under murderous fire. Each step forward, more and more men are smashed by French round shot. After only a few hundred paces, Brunswick decides that further advance will be too costly and halts the attack. For the first time since the outbreak of war, the French seem to have thrown back the enemy. But it's not over yet. A Prussian cannonball strikes an ammunition wagon.
That's bad luck.
Ranks of men are knocked down. The artillery duel halts briefly as men gaze in awe at the explosion. A Prussian officer urges Brunswick to seize the moment, but Brunswick hesitates, while a young French brigadier, the future King Louis-Philippe, rides up with 2 batteries of horse artillery to shore up the line. Kellerman, too, is on the spot, raising his hat and shouting, "Vive la Nation!" In previous engagements, the French had broken at the first sign of danger. At Valmy, they hold firm. From the Royal Veterans to the Raw Volunteers, the exhausted gunners to the brave generals. At 5 p.m, with rain falling and ammunition running low, firing dies out on both sides.
Here and today, a new epoch in the history of the world has begun, and you can boast you were present at its birth. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, German poet and Valmy veteran. Again, I probably pronounced that wrong.
Valmy was neither a large nor costly battle. There are just a few hundred casualties on both sides. Some debate whether it should even be called a battle at all. But it is a crucial moment of the French Revolution. With its very survival in jeopardy, the Revolutionary Army, augmented by the old Royal Army, has stood its ground and checked the enemy invasion. The next day, emboldened by news of victory, France's new National Convention abolishes the monarchy and proclaims a French Republic. The French army pulls back to better defensive terrain. The Prussians are left to fend for themselves in a hostile country. Heavy rain continues to thrash the armies through September, while desertion and disease reduce Brunswick's main force to just 17,000 effectives. The Prussian general has had enough. His well-drilled soldiers are a precious resource, not to be thrown away on a doomed enterprise.
That's one kind of mistake.
What's more, the situation in Eastern Europe seems a more pressing concern, where Poland is about to be carved up once more.
More partitions.
Brunswick gives the order to retreat, and on the 23rd of October, the last coalition troops recross the River Rhine back into Germany. It will take more than 20 years and the loss of more than 3 million lives before another coalition army gets as close to Paris as Brunswick did that autumn in 1792. Do you want to watch unreleased, new epic history videos right now, weeks before they drop on YouTube? How about a new episode of our Rise of China series, as we cover China's devastating war against Japan that led to millions of deaths and appalling atrocities? And yet, as one of the big five Allied powers, China's contribution to World War II is still hugely neglected in the West. If you want to watch the...
And that'll do it. That might be another series I'll react to, so, but again, it's another well done video by Epic History, and I'm glad that finally they covered the Battle of Valmy, and it just shows how showing how the young French Republic is saved from the invasion of the First Coalition, and technically the defeat of the Duke of Brunswick's Prussian and Austrian force. So, so anyway, this has been another great and interesting video by Epic History. If you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.